NFL Talk with Elite Wages.
Yo, welcome back everyone. This is a new episode of NFL Talk with Elite Wages. We have now started NFL Week 10, which means we're well past halfway now into this NFL season. And yeah, we got a nice week this week. I feel like I got a lot of variety in the bet selections this week. I don't normally recap a Thursday, and I'm not going to recap it now, but I am going to say the new Pine Sports Jackson AI companion app that I've been partnered with, it went down a storm on Thursday night. We actually cashed that first play, so look out for the rest of my player props for this week, which I used Jackson to help me with. But yeah, let's go straight into this episode. And this week's plays, we're going to go to NFL Sunday, and we've actually got another earlier kickoff, so we need alarm clocks on nice and early for this game over in Germany. So we got the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. So we're starting off our NFL Sunday with an early kickoff in Germany. It's not the most exciting game we've ever seen, but in my opinion, it's still worth a play. You know, there's always an edge in a game. I feel like I found a nice little edge, a little bit risky, but a nice edge. So let me start off by saying both of these teams have been absolutely awful, dreadful, shocking, terrible. You know, all those words. Both teams are 2-7 up to this point, 2 wins, 7 losses. With the Giants, they're actually now rock bottom of the league. The Panthers, a few places higher, as the 7th worst team in the league. But don't get me wrong, they're both as bad as each other. Firstly, like I said, the Giants are the second, ranked bottom, the dead last in the league. And I don't actually think they have any business being 6-point favourites to any team in this league. Secondly, I don't believe the Panthers are good enough to cover a +6 either. So where does that leave us this week? You can obviously understand why the books have a line at minus 6 for the Giants. You know, the Giants have shown they can score points, and the Panthers have shown they can struggle to score points. The Giants, they can stop teams from scoring, and the Panthers struggle to stop teams from scoring. So obviously you can understand it, but it leaves me with a little bit of a tricky game to find an edge. One thing I am going to predict is that the Giants do in fact win, but you know, it could be a close one. It could be dicey. It could be a blowout. You know, I can't predict that. So I'm going to stay off picking a side, picking a total, and we're actually going to go with a player prop, and it's a relatively well known that the bright spot in this Giants team is the rookie Malik Nabers. Despite being a rookie, Nabers has been a top wide receiver in the league early on in his career. His usage in particular has been extremely high for the Giants, as he's targeted by Dan Jones on 28% of team targets, and he actually averages 7.8 receptions per game. Nabers lines up at wide receiver in 69% of offensive snaps, and he's clearly established himself as the team's wide receiver 1, as he is the most productive player on this team. He now actually gets an easier matchup than he's been used to in recent weeks. You know, he's played a lot of the difficult teams in terms of matchups with wide receivers, and he now gets one of the easiest. So he'll face the Panthers, who have one of the worst secondaries in the league. In recent weeks, the Panthers allowed Cortland Sutton 8 receptions, Terry McLaurin 6, Drake London 6, and DJ Moore 5. And as I mentioned, Nabers is averaging 7.8 receptions per game. He is also averaging a huge 12 targets per game. So his potential in this game could be incredibly high. His reception line for this game has been set at 6.5, so it's quite a high number. But he has surpassed this in 5 of his 7 games so far this season. So with Malik Nabers' reception line set at 6.5, it makes it a little bit scary. It's a little bit higher than I would have liked. But the production for the Giants, you know, the fact that he's the focal point of this offense, especially in the passing game, and the fact that he will face a soft defense, it gives me more confidence in this play to take a punt. So we're going to throw one unit on Malik Nabers over 6.5 receptions at 1.8 odds over in the early kickoff in Germany. So for the next play, we're back onto normal time schedule. So it's going to be, well, for me, for the UK, it's a 6 o'clock kickoff, which is normal time. And we're going to go over to the Buffalo versus Indianapolis game. And for my next play, we go into the Colts and the Bills. Now, this game, I actually believe, is a complete mismatch. So my reasonings for this bet are going to be reasonably simple. Both of these two teams are on a different trajectory so far this season. The Colts are struggling on offense, which has led to a quarterback change so far, and that hasn't really worked out for the best. They still couldn't really get much going under Joe Flacco. It's safe to say the Colts, they've been lucky in their 4 wins this season. They faced the Dolphins without Tua. They cashed in with 14 points after an interception and a fumble recovery against the Bears. But in total, all 4 of their wins, they were within 1 score. The Colts are currently ranking in 22nd for points per game. They average only 20, but in their last 4 games, they've struggled to surpass 20 points. This isn't helped by some poor quarterback play, as the Colts' passing offense is the 7th worst rated in terms of passing yards per game. Their run game is only a slight improvement in their category, as they are middle of the league for rushing yards per game, averaging 121, obviously led by Jonathan Taylor. As for their defense, that's been the best part of their team, allowing the 12th least points per game to opponents. So that's fairly high. That's fairly good for them. So while they've been fairly decent at keeping teams out of the end zone or in scoring position, they actually allowed the 8th most passing yards per game and the 2nd most rushing yards per game, which places them in the bottom 4 in total yards allowed to opponents per game. In all honesty, it does not bode well when you're about to face a team like the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills are actually ranked as one of the top offenses and top defenses in the league this season. Offensively, they're sitting in 4th for most points per game, averaging 28. Obviously led by MVP candidate Josh Allen, who's passed for the 10th most passing yards per game after hitting 2001 passing yards last week. The Bills are currently riding a 4-game win streak, all of which they accumulated 325 total yards, averaging 379 total yards over those 4 games, with Josh Allen throwing over 215 in each. They've also accumulated 118 points, averaging 29.5, a number they have now surpassed in 3 straight games. Defensively, they've been solid all season long. They averaged the 8th lowest points per game with 19, and going back to their 4-game win streak I just mentioned, they've averaged 16 points per game in those 4, while keeping 2 of those 4 opponents to 10 points each. I believe this game is a mismatch all over the field, with the Bills having the better offense and the better defense. The line for the game favours the Bills by 3, and in all 7 of their wins so far this season, they've won by 3 or more. The Colts, on the other hand, they've lost by 3 in 4 out of 5 losses this season. I'm going to comfortably back Josh Allen. I'm going to comfortably back the Bills, especially with the uncertainty in this offense, which is expected to be led by Joe Flacco. I'm going to go with the consistency and the just pure dominance on offense and on defense for Josh Allen. James Cook, all the guys, and we're going to take a 1-unit play for the Buffalo Bills -3 at odds of 1.8. So the next one, we are going to head over to a really, really interesting matchup, and this is probably strangely my game of the week. So we're going to go to the Pittsburgh and the Washington game. So to those of you who are regular listeners, you will know that I am reasonably high on both of these two teams this year, but obviously for 2 different reasons. If I'm being honest, even if you're not a regular listener, I can almost guarantee if you've listened to 1 or 2 episodes before, you'd have heard me talk about either one of these 2 teams in one of those episodes. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know why I like the Steelers or the Commanders. For the Steelers, it's their elite defense. And for the Washington Commanders, it's been their new and improved offense, which has been led by rookie sensation Jaden Daniels. So let's actually start with the Washington Commanders. They've been excellent all year, going from one of the worst teams in the league last year to one of the best in the league this year. Offensively, Washington averaged the 3rd most points per game, 3rd most total yards per game, and they lead the league in red zone attempts per game, converting those attempts into the 5th most red zone touchdowns per game. So, offense has been hot, offense has been rolling. Obviously 7-2 to start the season, and their average win differential is by 14 points. Two things I actually noticed with this though. One, they are obviously due some negative regression. While they've had a good hot start to the year, it won't be long before they face a tough team who brings them back down to earth. And number two, of those 9 games they've played so far, they've only faced one team defensively ranked inside the top 10, and that was the Chicago Bears, who ranked 5th. And coincidentally, that was probably their toughest game of the year for the Commanders. They scored only 18 points, and that was after a fluke Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels. So they would have had, obviously 6 less. They now face the 2nd best defense in the league, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like this Steelers defense has flown slightly under the radar. Obviously, everyone knows they're a good defense, but not a lot of people are talking enough about how good they are. The Steelers are allowing the 2nd least points per game, averaging 14.9, and have only allowed one team to score more than 20 points. So that in itself is just a crazy stat. As well as this, they are holding teams to the 9th least total yards per game, with 310 in total. One thing that Washington is particularly good at is running the ball, and it just so happens that the Steelers are also very good at stopping the run. They allow the 4th least rushing yards per game. The Steelers are also one of the best teams inside the red zone, limiting opponents to just 1 red zone score per game, which is 2nd least in the NFL. Coincidentally, that is something else the Washington Commanders are good at, is converting those red zone attempts into scores. So again, that's a mismatch there where one will counteract the other. A few episodes ago, I actually mentioned how I believe the Steelers team could be a contender if they fix their offensive issues. And in the last 3 weeks, I'm going to say 4 weeks, but in the last 3 weeks in particular, they've scored 32, 37 and 26 points as they are riding a 3-game win streak. So I think it's safe to say they've actually improved on their offense. In those 3 weeks, Russ Wilson has been named starter, and in the last 2 games, he has helped them propel their offense into the top 3 for points per game average. Obviously, in the last 3 weeks, ranking them ahead of Washington. Now, obviously, I'm a lot higher on the Steelers' defense than I am offense, but it seems to me the Steelers have figured out their offensive struggles. The line in this game is set at -3 in favour of the Commanders. I'm actually going to buy half a point, so I'm going to make it a 3.5 spread. I'm actually going to go with the Steelers 3.5 spread. So the Commanders have actually won by 4 or more in 5 of their 9 games this season. Obviously, like I said, average win of 14 points. But the Steelers, they've covered a 3.5 in all 9 games, with 2 of their losses both coming by 3 points. I'm very confident in betting the Steelers plus 3.5, obviously by the half a point, and I do even slightly lean to them winning outright. Buying that extra half a point, in my opinion, is well worth it in this game, as it saves us from a walk-off field goal push. With the Steelers' recent form and the Commanders due some regression, I'll happily back the old saying, defense wins championships. So we're going to go 1 unit, Pittsburgh Steelers plus 3.5 at odds of 1.75. So we're going to go to the next game. It's going to be in the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints game. We're going to have a double play on this one as well. So as you would have noticed, it's a divisional matchup game. So divisional matchups galore, something I've been accustomed to recently. I'm not actually sure why I'm drawn to these kind of matchups, but I've been fairly good on them so far, and they've been fairly good to me thus far as well. So we obviously started our Sunday over in Germany with a divisional game. We had Thursday Night Football as a divisional game, and now we're back in stateside, and we're going to go back to another divisional game for the NFC South showdown between the Falcons and the Saints. We're going to start off with the Saints as well. They are the hosts, so the 2-7 New Orleans Saints, they'll host the 6-3 Atlanta Falcons. Just from that opening line there, you can already hear a huge difference. The records alone realistically tell the stories for both teams. But starting with the hosts, the Saints are currently riding a 7-game losing streak after winning their first 2 games of the season. And obviously it comes as a big surprise considering the first 2 weeks they were the hottest offense in the league, scored the most points in the league. But since those 2 wins, they've only managed to score more than 20 points in just 3 of the last 7 games. Their high being 27 and their low being just 8. In those 7 games, they're averaging just 16 points per game. Obviously, their offense has been woeful, and the last few weeks, Derek Carr hasn't been out on the field due to injury. So understandably, a rookie quarterback in Spencer Rattler looked a bit like a deer in the headlights, a little bit shaky. So obviously getting Carr back should have been a boost. He was back last week, and they suffered another defeat in the hands of the NFL's worst ranked team, the Carolina Panthers. This awful run of form it now drops the Saints down to 15th in points scored per game average, and obviously, like I said, they're only averaging 16 points over the last 7 weeks. This comes from being a very average passing team and just a slightly above average rushing team, but overall they're middle of the pack in offense, who averages 332 yards per game. But while their offense has been struggling, their defense has struggled a great deal more. Their defense is allowing the 7th most points per game, which is 25 on average. A number they've actually allowed 5 of their last 6 opponents to surpass. And last week was obviously the Panthers, and they scored 23, so they're only 2 points off that as well. They've actually struggled in all areas of the field. They average the 7th most rushing yards allowed, the 5th most passing yards allowed, and overall that ranks them as the 5th worst team in the league in terms of opponents' yardage gained per game. Average is 376. These stats and the metrics, they won't bode well when you're going to be facing a team that beat you a few weeks ago, and who are ranked significantly higher in all the main categories on the field. The Falcons, they've looked sharp all season long. They suffered a large loss to the Seahawks a few weeks back, but aside from that, the Falcons they've been really, really good. They've executed well, and they've had a clear game plan. The Falcons have scored 20 or more in 6 of their 9 games, and coincidentally, the 3 that went under 20 were their 3 losses. The Falcons are actually sitting in the top half of the league, on the verge of sneaking into the top 10 in most categories. They average the 12th best 24 points per game, obviously led by Cousins and their passing attack, which ranks as 6th best, and obviously backed up by their run game, which is led by top 10 running back Bijan Robinson. With these two combined, they are ranked as the 8th best offense in terms of total yardage per game, averaging 364. Their defense, on the other hand, it's been their downfall. That's been their weak point. They've been doing their job to a certain extent. They've been holding teams off and things like that, but they haven't been great. They were expected to be a lot better and a lot more locked down. They've allowed 7 of their 9 opponents 20 or more points and have averaged 24 points allowed. No, that's not disastrous considering they've played teams like the Eagles, Chiefs, the Bucs twice, Seahawks and the Cowboys. All of those teams are known for being able to score points, and a lot of points too. A few additions in this game, of course. The firing of Dennis Allen after the Saints lost their 7th game on the bounce. Chris Olave is questionable and likely out, as is Kool-Aid McKinstry. As expected, Marshawn Lattimore was traded away on Tuesday. He is now at the Commanders. And obviously that makes an already depleted secondary for the Saints even more vulnerable. For the Falcons, Drake London is questionable with a hip injury, but I am seeing he is active. But even if he is out, you might see Darnell Mooney step up. He's played really well in the past couple of weeks. Kyle Pitts has done the same also, and Bijan Robinson, they'll all step up to solidify the offense. The Falcons are favourites in this game by 3 points, and 4 of their 6 wins have been by 3 or more points. And as for the Saints, 6 of their 7 total losses for the New Orleans Saints have been by 3 or more. The Falcons are by far the better team of the two in general, but more specifically in their division. The Saints are 1-3 in the division, whereas the Falcons have been completely dominant and they're 4-0, with a win margin of 8 points against teams in the NFC South, so covering a -3 spread in 3 out of 4 of those games. So the first play in this game, I'm going to go 1 unit for the Falcons -3, and that's at odds of 1.9. But like I said, we're going to take another play within this game. So obviously we're going to stay in Atlanta, or in New Orleans as they face Atlanta. I'm going to piggyback off some of the stats in the Falcons -3 breakdown, and I'm actually going to go back to back on Bijan Robinson. He was my play last week, and he's been a solid option for me in both betting and in fantasy. And he's going to be the same again for me this week. Much of what I said in last week's breakdown translated into their win against the Dallas Cowboys. He is the focal point in this offense, and he is needed to help this well-oiled machine run smoothly. As I mentioned earlier, the Saints' defense is ranked as the 7th worst team for rushing yards allowed per game with 136, and they're actually bottom 5 in passing yards allowed, averaging 239. This is fairly significant because Bijan Robinson is a top dual threat running back in the league, especially in the last 4 weeks. Bijan Robinson, he's achieved over 100 yards from scrimmage in the last 4 straight games, and in 6 from his 9 starts of the season. Bijan is averaging 70 rushing yards and 33 receiving yards per game, which has increased to 47 receiving yards and 84 rushing yards in the most recent 3 games he's played. Robinson is now going to be a huge problem for the Saints to contain with his newfound form, his newfound confidence, and with the Falcons' favourites in this game. It wouldn't surprise me to see them lean on Bijan Robinson more and more to help the run game run down the clock. Bijan is a guy that gives everything his all in every game, and recently he's been paying off in wins and obviously to his personal stats as well. So I'm going to look for this to continue, and we're going to go for Bijan Robinson's scrimmage yard line, which is set at, let me have a look, where is it? It hasn't actually been set, but I'm going to play this as soon, I'm going to lock it in as soon as it comes up. His rushing yard line is set at 77. It's 73, so I'm going to assume his passing yard line is slightly lower than that, and we're going to go rushing and receiving, so I'm going to assume it's going to be around 100. So obviously the lower the better the number, but I'm going to play this up to 120. So if you can get it sort of under 120, lock it in. Let me know what number you get in the comments below. I'll let you know what I get when I post it on Twitter, so keep an eye on my Twitter. So yeah, we're going to go Bijan Robinson over, between 100 and 120 scrimmage yards. 1 unit play on that one.
Fantasy football.
Yeah, so it's that time of the week again where we go back to fantasy football selection. So those of you that don't know, I'm actually partnered with a fantasy football app called Fantasy Game Day app, and it's available to all UK players. And it basically allows you to become your own GM, manager, coach of your own team. You get to pick a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. You get a flex position, and you also get a captain slot. So this captain slot will allow you to earn double points for one player in particular. Can only be a skill set player, running back, wide receiver, or a tight end. And like I said, my selections for the captain slot throughout this year so far have been absolutely electric. They've been over 40 points in all but 2, I think, which is a solid number. And last week was Bijan Robinson, and he actually had over 40 points last week as well. And this week, actually before I go into that, the idea of this segment is for me to give my opinion on 2 players that I'm going to be taking in my fantasy team this week. One is going to be my captain, so maximum points possible, doubled, and then a value pick who is a player that is significantly under the average amount for the players in this buy-in, and with the potential upside of scoring more points, and specifically points that your opponents won't have, to try and give you that edge. So first of all, for my fantasy captain selection, it's going to be Bijan Robinson again, running back for the Falcons, and he's going to cost you 8,000 this week. So again, I'm going to go back to my usual strategy on piggybacking off of my previous bet, and I'm going to go back with Bijan again for my captain. Last week, he was a solid option in, again, betting and in fantasy. He totaled over 400 points, and he possibly could have had over 50 if he got a touchdown opportunity. but obviously Algier ran that one in. But I do believe this week is his week. I think he'll get 100 scrimmage yards and a touchdown as well. Saints allow running backs an average of 103 rushing yards per game and 30 yards through the air. So we could see a similar outcome from last week in this week's game. We're going to go back to Bijan Robinson for captain. And for my value pick this week, I'm going to go for a tight end. I haven't played a tight end in a while for my value pick, and obviously towards the beginning of the season, I was targeting this position for the value pick due to the lower amount of production that tight end position tends to get compared to other positions. Hence the reason the price is so low for tight ends, because their fantasy score tends to be a lot lower. This week we're going to go with Patrick Freiermuth of the Steelers. When you look back at the season so far, he's not sort of done anything exceptional, but he's been a steady and a consistent player for the Steelers. He's been a reliable receiving option. He has a 83% catch rate and he's the clear tight end one. He has a 75% snap rate. He does get a slightly tougher matchup against the solid Washington defense this week, but he's averaging 3 receptions per game, 33 yards per game. He's had the consistency and also the potential to go over these numbers. He's actually already had he's had a few 5 reception games and a few 50 plus yard games as well, and he's also caught a few touchdowns. So he's nice and cheap. He's got nice potential, good upside, and he's really cheap. So Pat Freiermuth, tight end for the Steelers, and he's going to cost $2,800. So they're my 2 fantasy selections this week: Bijan Robinson and Pat Freiermuth. So let me know in the comments below who you're rocking with this week, or if you're tailoring my picks. Let me know what you're doing, and we'll move on to my next NFL bet. So we're going to go to another divisional game, would you believe? Shall I actually go for a record on most divisional matchups bet on? I think I've actually just set a personal best. I think this is the 4th this week. So maybe we should do an over-under bet on divisional matchups for next week. I'm going for another divisional matchup. It's my 4th of the week. But like always, I have very good reason for it. It's not just a divisional matchup I'm targeting every week. I really like the reads in these games. So this one could potentially get a little bit sweaty towards the end, but I like it enough to take a risk. So I'm going to try and keep this one short and sweet. But I think this is actually a prime game for an over, and the total of 40.5 is far from unreachable for either team. The Chiefs, they are the team, I believe, who will achieve the most points in this game, in my opinion. And obviously playing a weaker team than they've been used to over the last few weeks, it couldn't have come at a better time. The Chiefs haven't been lightning, and they haven't been lighting this team up, this league up, with tons of points. But the Chiefs have only, they've been getting better and better over the last few weeks. Travis Kelce in particular has improved, certainly improved a lot over the last few weeks. Obviously Patrick Mahomes got DeAndre Hopkins, and their connection looked really tight in their win last week. And they should also get Juju back as well after missing 2 weeks. So all these things are starting to come together. The Chiefs rank in 10th for most points per game. They actually average 25, a number they have surpassed in 6 of their 8 games to date. But their most 3 recent games have been their best stretch on offense, scoring 27, 28 and 30. The Broncos, they've been hit and miss to start the year, as their 5-4 record suggests, but for the most part they've looked fairly good, especially on offense, where they look like a new and improved team led by Bo Nix. Denver are averaging 20 points per game, a number they've hit in 5 of their 9 games this season. But even though they're not consistently been firing on all cylinders, they still have contributed to game totals in most games. They've actually hit 40 or more in 4 of the last 5 games, and obviously the Chiefs as well. They've hit 40 in 6 of their total 8 games, including 3 in a row. The Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs are both known for having a good solid defense, as Denver ranks in 3rd and Kansas City in 4th for least points allowed, so 17.9 for the Broncos and 18.4 for the Chiefs. But I truly believe something has to give in this game. It's a well-known fact that the Chiefs have been, they've been keeping games fairly close. in their wins. They've only won by more than one score just twice, and with the spread being a -8, I believe the Broncos will see this as an opportunity to try and keep things close. I'm going to back the over in this game. I'm going to hope both offenses come out to play in this divisional matchup. And obviously, which for the Broncos could be a really key swing game in terms of their rankings within the division and for their playoff hopes. So there's going to be another one-unit play. Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos over 40.5, and that's odds of 1.83. Okay, on to my next one. This one's a little bit of a scary game in my opinion. So we're going to go to San Francisco and Tampa Bay. And yeah, this game scares me a lot in terms of trying to pick a team to win. The 49ers, they haven't looked their best selves, but they do get Christian McCaffrey back this week. How much will he play? We don't actually know. But even seeing him suited up is going to be a boost in morale. The Tampa Bay Bucks are coming off a tough loss as 9-point underdogs to the Chiefs, where in reality they could have quite easily won. So picking a team to win in this game is really, really difficult. I've gone with a different approach, and I'm going to take a player prop. The 49ers are 6-point favourites, so although I said I didn't want to pick a side, I am slightly hoping the game script for this game goes the way of the 49ers for my bet in particular. So we're going to go for a prop on Brock Purdy, and he's been labelled as mediocre by many people for quite a few years. But when you think about it, he has been a good player for the 49ers. So most recently, he's been utilising his legs more, and that's what I'm going to be targeting in this game. So his rushing yard line has been set at 13.5, a number he has surpassed in 5 out of 8 games, including 3 in a row. He's averaging 5 carries per game, 5 yards per carry, and he's averaging 26 rushing yards per game. So he could, on the potential alone, he could hit that quite easily. The Bucks have been really good against the run, but they have struggled to contain mobile quarterbacks this season. They averaged the 5th most rushing yards to a quarterback position, which is 29 per game. They have actually allowed 3 of the last 4 quarterbacks to rush for over 14 yards, and 6 of 9 on the year. The 49ers really need Brock Purdy to make plays in this game, whether or not they lead or trail. And with the Bucks quarterback pressure stats increasing week to week, Brock Purdy might need to rush a few times to gain some first downs or make some plays. So we're going to go with a bet on potential and sort of consistency within himself, and that's going to be Brock Purdy over 13.5 rushing yards at odds of 1.9.
Sunday Night Football.
So we're going over to Sunday Night Football, and we get actually a really, really great Sunday Night Football game. It's going to be between the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. So this game is actually going to be a crazy good game in terms of the matchup. It could even be a potential Super Bowl game as well. So both teams have their upsides and their downsides, but it's extremely difficult for me to fade the Lions in any way given what they have been able to do this season and in the most recent weeks they've had. The Lions stay as the league's highest scoring team, averaging 32 points per game, but in their last 5 games they've managed to score 42, 47, 52, 31 and 24, averaging 39 points across the last 5 games. This offense is a reasonably well-rounded team with a solid passer in Jared Goff, who has the Lions ranked in the top half of the league for yards per game. But it's their run game that's been their key contributor to their offense, and they are ranked as the 6th best team on the ground, averaging 152 yards per game. No other team scores more touchdowns than Detroit, and they average nearly 2 rushing touchdowns per game, which is tied most in the league. They've been able to move the ball up and down the field at will, and they've been able to score points on demand. The defensive side of the ball, they've suffered a huge blow, obviously, when losing Aiden Hutchinson, and it has shown as they've only registered 1 sack in the last 2 weeks. But despite that, they've actually played really well on defense since their bye week. So the bye week was 4 games ago. Detroit averaged the 5th lowest points per game allowed to opponents anyway on the season, averaging 18.5. But in the last 4 weeks since their bye, they've held their opponents to 9, 29, 14 and 14 points, averaging 16 points per game. As for the 6-3 Texans, things seem to have slowed down for them. Throughout the season, only one of their wins has been a blowout, and that was a 20-point victory against the New England Patriots. So, we've got to take that with a pinch of salt. But they do seem to have struggled a lot more than I'd have expected. Houston are ranked as the 17th, team for most points per game, averaging 22. But this is really quite surprising when they potentially have one of the best offenses on paper. You've got CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, who's obviously unfortunately out now, but they've got a really solid offense. CJ Stroud was last season's huge contributor to the Texans' success, and in turn, he's the main reason why everyone is looking to the Texans to challenge the Chiefs for the Super Bowl. But over the last 4 weeks, he's only thrown for over 200 yards just once. This is a fairly favourable matchup for him, as he'll face a team that allows the 4th most passing yards per game at 250 on average. And obviously now he gets Nico Collins back after losing Stephon Diggs. Joe Mixon has been the bright spark for this offense too. He's hit over 100 rushing yards in those 4 games where CJ went missing. I'd love for this to be a game where I can comfortably fade the Lions, being a Packers fan, but this is just another game where everything leans towards the Lions for me. Both teams clearly have great success running the ball, but equally both teams have success defending the run. And if the run game does get shut down, I'm extremely more confident in Jared Goff to lead the Lions to a victory than I am in CJ Stroud, who's obviously struggled in recent weeks. So I think the Lions will get another win on their record, and I think they'll win this game by 3 or more points, something they've been able to do in 6 out of 7 wins, with their winning average being 17 points per game. So we're going to take 1 unit on the Detroit Lions -3 at odds of 1.8. So just before I wrap up this episode and run down all my plays, I had an announcene on my Thursday Night Football episode. So for those of you that didn't listen to that one, didn't catch that one, I will reiterate my announcement in this one. So I've got an exciting new announcement this week. I've officially been accepted as an affiliate for Pine Sports, and for the use of their new AI sports companion buddy Jackson. Now, you might have heard me mention it in the beginning of this episode, and I will be using the Jackson companion buddy quite a lot throughout this season, and obviously I did use it in a few of my player props today as well. So let me explain a little bit more about Jackson. Jackson is a specifically engineered companion buddy, engineered with Pine Sports powerful tools to deliver insights that go beyond common public opinion. Jackson taps into gated data sources that gives you an edge. Whether you're looking for game predictions, injury updates, or in-depth player analysis, Jackson can deliver in seconds in what might take hours of research manually. Jackson offers real-time access to news, betting lines, player and team statistics, player prop information, game schedules, you name it. Jackson can analyze historical performance. He can deliver valuable insights into betting opportunities, including plus EV picks, arbitrage opportunities, and fantasy projections. As a result of being a brand ambassador for Pine Sports, I've been given a 50% off discount code. If you would like to ride along with the plays myself and Jackson put together, or if you want to try the research tool out for yourself, I 100% recommend it, and I 100% recommend using my code. So use code ELITE, ELITE, at checkout for 50% off. Go and snap up Jackson quick. He's an absolutely really good tool to use for betting, and I found it really handy while making a lot of my selections this week. So go ahead, use my code in the checkout for 50% off. So with that now does wrap up this episode. It was fairly reasonably sized, but I feel like I got a lot of information out there. As I said in the beginning of the Tuesday episode. It was a day early. The Tuesday episode, last week's podcast episode for NFL Week 9 was actually my worst in statistical stats on Spotify and all the other podcast platforms. I'm not actually sure why, but I feel like that was actually my best one, and that was actually my best result week as well. We went 8-2 for over plus 5 units, and yeah, that was my lowest listeners, my lowest views. All that was my lowest. It was my season low, if you like. I'm not sure why, but I'd love to get this back up to those top numbers that I was getting at the beginning of the season, especially when we're finding form and we're getting hot. So I'm going to run down the plays for this week again. So we'll go with Malik Neighbours over 6.5 receptions, Brock Purdy over 13.5 rushing yards, Bijan Robinson. Again, his scrimmage yard line hasn't been set yet, but I will play this up to 120. Falcons -3, Bills -3, Steelers +3.5. Remember to buy that half a point. Chiefs and Broncos over 40.5, and the Lions -3 on Sunday Night Football. All those are 1 unit. Good luck to everyone that tails my plays. If you do tail my plays, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you all. Appreciate everyone for listening this long. I'd love for everyone to go over or click the link in my bio, the Linktree link. You can get obviously access to Jackson, like I mentioned, Fantasy Game Day app. You can sign up there as well. Again, both of those have codes for 50% off using code ELITE, ELITE. You can use the same Linktree link for my Twitter, which I'll update on that Bijan Robinson line as well. Discord, which is 24/7 Discord. We've got no stopping. Always chatting. We've got Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, Substack. Everything and anything and everything is on there. TikTok as well. So go over, like and subscribe on all those. Follow me on all those. I'll follow back. And yeah, again, appreciate everyone for listening this long. I'll be back next week for the recap episode. So I'll catch you later.